Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Pratik and I'll be taking up the News Today discussion for October 19, 20, 21st and 22nd. First news is about CAQM invokes stage 2 of GRAP in the entire NCR. So here we'll look into the functioning of CAQM and we'll discuss what exactly is the GRAP mechanism and when does it get invoked. And we'll also look into the pollution issue that Delhi faces generally in the month of October onwards. Second news is with respect to US-Australia critical minerals framework. So we'll discuss about the reasons that has prompted this agreement and what exactly are some of the essential aspects of this framework, and then what exactly is India's approach towards critical minerals. In the third news, we'll talk about Chandrayaan 2's observations of Sun's CME on the moon. So here we'll discuss what exactly is the coronal mass ejections and what exactly has the Chandrayaan 2's observations or orbiter has observed with respect to the impact of the Sun's CME on the moon's atmosphere. Then in the fourth news, we'll discuss new strategic EU-India agenda. So we'll discuss the 5-pillar approach with respect to this news. And in the fifth news, we'll discuss Japan elects Sanae Takaichi as its first female prime minister. So in this news, we'll not discuss India-Japan relations, but we will discuss or we'll compare and contrast India's political system with that of Japanese political system. Then we have some quick updates, and in the place in news, we'll discuss Italy. Right, so the first news is CAQM invokes stage 2 of graded response action plan in the entire NCR, right? So the context here is that recently Supreme Court was in a dilemma whether to allow the bursting of crackers in the NCR region or whether it should follow a balanced approach. So ultimately, guided by several considerations, the Supreme Court decided to follow a graded response or a balanced response or an approach which essentially balanced the livelihood concerns of the people along with the right to clean environment. Now the anticipation or the objective was that it will ensure that people are following their culture and tradition, but at the same time it will not irrevocably pollute the environment or the air. But if you look at the trends that happened, especially after the days following Diwali, we have seen that the air quality has diminished significantly, or the air quality has become very, very severe, right? So in this context, the CAQM has invoked stage 2 of the graded response action plan. So let us discuss the idea behind the graded response plan, what exactly it is, and when does it get invoked. So to understand this, we need to have some idea about the air quality index. So air quality index was launched in 2014 to measure the quality of air in the NCR region or in the entire country, right? So here there are 6 categories in which the air quality index can be classified, and this is based on the classification of 6 gases including, or 8 gases including PM 2.5, PM 10, and ozone and other gases, right? So here 0 to 50 means that the air quality is good. If the air quality is between 51 to 100, it is average. So under these 2 areas, no graded response takes place. So under this, the poor one is from 101 to 200, that is the poor. And within this, stage 1 of GRAP takes place, okay? Then the fourth one is 201 to 300, that is very poor. And here, this is stage 1 of GRAP, this is stage 2. And when the air quality is from 301 to 400, then it is severe. And 450 plus is called as very severe. Okay, so this is the broad idea. I'll tell you the exact classification, but in a way, in a nutshell, what it is that air quality index that there is several classification of air quality on this matter, on this basis. And when the air quality reaches a certain level, then a mechanism kicks in, and that mechanism is called as GRAP, that is called as an emergency mechanism, under which several measures are undertaken. For example, under grade 2, what happens is that use of coal and firewood is restricted, and diesel generation sets will face limitation. So this is a kind of mechanism that takes place under the stage 2 of GRAP, right? Now the second question is, what exactly is CAQM? So CAQM is a statutory body that is commissioned for air quality management, and it is essentially for three things: for planning, for monitoring, and for implementation of all the measures that is required for the air quality in the country, especially in the NCR region, and it is for the implementation of GRAP. So these are the stages that we were talking about earlier. So poor category is from 201 to 300, then very poor category is 301 to 400, and severe category is 401 to 450, and severe plus is 451 plus. So as of now, this is the air quality that we are currently witnessing in Delhi, which is around 340 or 350. That would be within the very poor category. So when we say the air quality is very poor, we are talking about a quantitative number. It's not a random number. It means that the air quality is between 301 to 400. And as a response of that, stage 2 of GRAP will kick into. And who will implement that? It will be done by CAQM, that is Commission for Air Quality Management. Now, what is the nature of this body? It is a statutory body, not an executive body. Why? Because it has been constituted under a specific law, that is Commission for Air Quality Management in NCR and adjoining areas, Act 2021. And it has replaced the earlier body, that was Environmental Pollution Prevention and Control Authority, or EPCA. Now, another thing that you should understand, and this is something that most frequently people have doubts over, is that why does air quality in Delhi gets bad, especially after October? So before October also, the air quality remains in the poor category or maybe in the average category. But especially after in the winter season, which especially gets during the onset of October, the air quality deteriorates a lot. So what could be some of the reasons behind that? So for this, we can think of it in terms of 3-4 reasons. One could be in terms of the geographical reason. So these conditions can be considered as in terms of geographical reason. Then you have reasons that are outside the state, right? So reasons which are outside the state, and then there are things outside NCR or outside Delhi, and then there are factors which are inside Delhi. So this can be a reasonable way to understand the whole reasons why Delhi's air pollution gets bad, especially after October. So first, let's understand the geographical reason. So first thing here is that the air that Delhi witnesses in October or onwards October is, before that, it is easterly, which is easterly wind blows. For example, if this is Delhi, and earlier, the wind would be blowing from east side, easterly, or the northeasterly side, that would take moisture from Bay of Bengal. So it would be moisture rich. But after October, there's a reversal of monsoon, and then this wind is replaced by westerlies. Now, westerlies, they originate from the Rajasthan areas or even beyond that, and they are not water containing, or they do not contain too much moisture, right? So it definitely increases the amount of dust that it contains. When it has more dust, it will also bring more PM 2.5 and PM 10. That is why it is one of the factors that leads to deterioration of the air quality in Delhi. Second reason, very important reason, is that there is a temperature inversion. Now, to understand temperature inversion, think of it like this. In the normal circumstances, you have a layer of hot air or hot wind, let's say hot air, and then you have cool air and then colder air. So this is, as the height increases, the temperature also decreases. So with increase in height, the temperature decreases. So here the particulate matter or the dust particles can go to some other places as well. It can have multiple areas in which it can expand. But the same thing does not happen in the colder temperature, or especially after October. What happens is this region becomes cold, then it is warm, and then it is cold or warm. So in this region, as the colder air gains weight, it does not disperse to the upper side, right? So it continues to be here, it continues to stuck here, so its vertical expansion does not take place. Therefore, it continues to be stuck in this range only. So that is why temperature inversion creates poor air quality. The third reason is with respect to the low wind speed. So wind is very low, so therefore what happens during this time is that the pollutants do not get dispersed horizontally. So in terms of the temperature inversion, the dispersal of is not done at the vertical level, and here it is not done at the horizontal level. So these can be considered as the geographical reason for the poor air quality in Delhi. Then if we talk about the reasons which are outside Delhi, it is the number one reason is burning of stubble in adjoining regions or states like Haryana and Punjab, right? Stubble is the leftover crops or some stalks or stems which they need to clear in order to start the next crop cycle. And it is because of the technology, now farmers are able to use a lot of, this can be done very effectively now. The burning process can be done very effectively because of harvesters, etc. And because of the fact that the other government, the state government, is sometimes do not cooperate with the center with respect to the stubble burning part, and therefore this leads to huge pollution in the capital, or especially in the NCR region. In fact, according to a report by IIT Kanpur, it stated that the amount of, or the contribution of stubble burning to the air quality in Delhi is as high as 20%, and sometimes it can even be as high as 30%. So stubble burning continues to be a very prominent reason for the declining air quality in the NCR region. The next part is with respect to the factors which are present in the Delhi NCR region itself, and this can be categorized as vehicular emission, industrial emission, construction dust, garbage burning, etc. So all these reasons which are inherent in the Delhi NCR region can be considered as another factor which makes the air poor in quality. Now, if you look at the air quality index, it was launched in 2014 to gauge or to measure the air pollution level and communicate the risk to public. There are 6 categories as we have discussed. Good is from 0 to 50, satisfactory is from 50 to 100, moderately polluted is 100 to 200, then poor from 200 to 300, very poor is from 300 and 400, and severe from 400 to 500, and very severe is for 450 onwards. Okay? So there are 8 pollutants which are categorized or which are considered for AQI. These are PM10, PM2.5, then SO2, NO2, carbon monoxide, but there's no carbon dioxide. So be very careful here. O3, well, that is ozone. So ground lower level ozone is also considered to be a pollutant. NH3, that is ammonia, and PB, that is lead, are considered for calculating AQI. So this completes our first topic. If you take a look at the questions which have come from this topic, this is a prelims topic. In the cities of our country, which among the following atmospheric gases are normally considered in calculating the value of air quality index? First is carbon dioxide, second carbon monoxide, third nitrogen dioxide, fourth sulfur dioxide, fifth methane. Now you tell me which one would be the right answer here, because we have already discussed this topic. In the mains examination, there was a question on Mumbai, Delhi, and Kolkata are the three mega cities of the country, but the air pollution is much more serious in Delhi as compared to the other two. Why is it so? So in this, you can discuss about all these matters that we have covered, where Delhi has a peculiar problem, and you can talk about all these things, especially the part of stubble burning, and especially because of the fact that Delhi does not lie close to the oceans, or it's not in the vicinity of, it has what is called as continental effect, right? So you can talk about this. Let's move to the second topic, that is US-Australia Critical Minerals Framework. And this topic is from GS Paper 2, International Relations. So all the agreements that major country end up involving itself into, they are also important from the perspective of IR, provided they impact India's interest, okay? So this is something that has implication for not just India, but for a lot of other countries as well, because critical minerals or rare earth elements are something that is used by majority of the countries in a variety of uses, or applications are huge, right? So what exactly led to this decision, and what exactly are some of the factors or some of the points that we need to take care of to understand this? So first thing is, China has banned, or China has put limitations on the export of critical minerals. That is one of the most important reasons for this decision to take place. And we'll discuss the importance of critical minerals in a while, but for first reason is that this is to diversify the sources of critical minerals. So very important that you diversify the supply chain, because China has a monopoly on rare earth element. Approximately 85 to 95% of rare earth elements are used or are exported from China. And if China decides to ban it, then other countries will face a lot of problem, because most of the industries use critical elements or critical earth elements for variety of uses, including in electric vehicles, in solar panels, and other industries. Even in defense, it is very much important. So this decision will diversify the sources from China. And secondly, it will also expand on the earlier agreements, critical mineral partnership, etc. So basically it is to diversify this and to ensure that the supply chain is not completely dependent on China, right? So that is one thing. Then what exactly are some of the elements of the framework? So first element of this framework, or one of the major element of this framework, is about joint exploration. So Australia and US will jointly commit tasks that will ensure that there are several mines and areas that would be explored for critical earth elements, and in that they will be providing for financial and technical experience from US side as well. So that is these joint exploration part. Then they will be using it to, second, a minimum floor price. So this is a very important thing, because since China has a monopoly on the production and exploration of the critical earth elements, then what would happen is that if some other producer comes up, then what China can do is it can provide those resources at a very minimum price, and the other producer cannot compete with that. So now they have decided that there is going to be a critical floor price beyond which they will not accept, or they will not trade the critical minerals, right? So these are some of the two aspects of this. So let's take a look at what exactly is this news all about. So this is about two things. Objective, as we discussed, to combat China's near absolute monopoly and to diversify sources of critical minerals. Two things. Second, the framework includes funding for multiple projects aimed at boosting the supply. So supply and in defense, and especially for defense and energy security. It will also deploy a mechanism to set a minimum price floor or floor price for critical minerals to counter China's market manipulation strategy of flooding markets that make global competitor unviable. In fact, the same strategy is also followed by OECD countries. So the OECD countries has provided for some sort of minimum barrel of price or price per barrel of the energy or the oil resources, so that any country which is part of OECD will not sell beyond that price. So that this will ensure that everyone has some sort of basic opportunities to sell, and not one can use its leverage to lower down the prices. So this is again a very important initiative, but whether China will accept these terms and conditions is yet to be seen. Also, whether it will be applicable, to what extent it will be applicable, and can the Australia or the other countries can accept the unpredictability inherent in the Trump administration, that again is something that we continue or will have to see in the future. Now, when it comes to critical minerals, what exactly are there? So critical minerals are characterized by two things. First is that they are very critical for the development of the country, so they are important. Second, there is some sort of risk with respect to their supply chain, right? So these two characteristics make a mineral a critical mineral, okay? So they are vital for modern technologies and clean energy, but with high supply risk due to limited availability or dependence on few countries, and which some of the examples of critical minerals could be lithium, cobalt, nickel, copper, etc. Now, what are rare earth elements and how they are different from the critical minerals? So rare earth elements can be considered to be a subset of the critical minerals, right? So they are subset, which means that this is critical minerals and this would be your rare earth elements. And it is they are essential for technologies like electric vehicles, wind turbines, smartphones, and defense equipment, right? In fact, if you look at the concerns with the critical mineral supply chain, first thing is there is geographic concentration. So critical mineral production and processing is concentrated in few regions, especially in China, which makes the global supply chain prone to political and economic risk. In fact, Democratic Republic of Congo supplies 70% of world's cobalt, okay? Second is weaponization of resources. So China has restricted exports of key materials such as gallium and germanium, effectively weaponizing the mineral trade. China dominates the rare earth sector, meeting 85 to 95% of the global demand. So it is not that, or contrary to the term rare earth element or metal, it is not rare in nature. But the problem is that they are rarely located in such area through which economically it will be easier for them to extract. So the economic potential is what makes it rare. The second thing is that they are not located in a variety of places. They are located in certain countries in more quantities or in more number. And these countries, especially China, has done really well in developing the technologies to extract these rare earth elements. And that is why it has become very prominent as far as the rare earth elements or earth is concerned, right? So these are some of the concerns with the supply chain with respect to the critical minerals. So if you look at the India strategy with respect to this, India has taken up 3 measures or 3 pillars of the strategy are, first is with respect to a mission called National Critical Mineral Mission. And for this, it is to secure India's critical mineral supply chain by ensuring mineral availability from both the domestic and the foreign sources. And to fructify this, like this is the most essential aspect of India's policy with respect to ensuring critical mineral, that is with respect to both foreign and domestic. So with respect to the domestic front, India has undertaken MMRDA amendment, that is Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Amendment Act 2023. It enables exploration and mining of critical minerals. In fact, it gives a lot of leeway when it comes to this mining of critical minerals. There are certain restrictions when traditional mining is done, which includes the impact assessment and providing certain funds for those who are impacted by mining process. So some of these terms and conditions are relaxed when the mineral in case is critical mineral. So these conditions are relaxed. Third is with respect to mineral security partnership. So India joined the US-led Mineral Security Partnership finance network to secure sustainable supply chain for critical minerals. Now you tell me which countries other than India and US are part of this initiative. Okay, so this is all about the second news. Let's talk about the third news, which is Chandrayaan 2 makes first ever observation of effects of sun's coronal mass ejection on moon. And this, of course, is from GS Paper 3, Science and Technology. And this observation was made using the Chandra's Atmospheric Composition Explorer 2, that is CHASE-2 instrument on board the orbiter. Okay? So first understand what exactly is Chandrayaan and why do we want to study the surface or the atmosphere of moon, right? So first is that when the Chandrayaan 1 was launched, the initial objective was just to see, or that was basically for a technology demonstration exercise. And it only involved an orbiter. So it was essentially just to go and reach moon and observe its atmosphere and the external condition. The second time when Chandrayaan was launched, that was Chandrayaan 2, that was launched in 2019. It did not just contain orbiter, that is the orbiter, it also has lander and rover. So the lander was named as, I think it was named as Vikram, and the rover was named as, so the lander was called Vikram, and rover was called as Pragyan. Now again, a trivia for you. Of whose name Vikram is named on which scientist first, and what is the name of the term Pragyan? Anyway, let's move on to this. So in Chandrayaan 2, you had lander and rover, and the objective was to study the moon's south pole, okay? Because it was something that was not undertaken earlier, and only very few countries like US, Russia, and China has landed or soft landed on the moon surface. And India wanted to land on the southern side of the South Pole with respect to the a soft landing of this. But unfortunately, the landing or the soft landing mission did not succeed, and especially with respect to Chandrayaan, and we lost control of the lander, and of course the rover as well, right? So this was a setback in the India space mission, but in the third lunar mission, we were able to succeed, and our rover was successfully planted on the surface of moons as well, right? So here, recently, in terms of this news, so I've given you the context. So what happened currently? What happened was that there was recent solar frames were witnessed. So we know that sun has this outer atmosphere, which is called as corona. And sometime there are several ejections or gases comes out from this, right? And luckily, the orbiter from Chandrayaan 2 was present on the moon's atmosphere and it was able to make some observations. So this news is about the observation that the orbiter was able to make during this process or during this time. And essentially it was on the CMEs, that is coronal mass ejections. Ejection means things which are ejected from the sun's atmosphere, and corona is the outer part of the sun's atmosphere, right? So this basically, the orbiter was there to make an observation of this, and this news is about what observations that the orbiter was able to make there. So if you look at this, first let's understand what are coronal mass ejections. So coronal mass ejections are large expulsions of plasma and magnetic fields from the sun's corona, that is the outermost part of the sun's atmosphere. Second, it is often associated with what? Solar flares and active sunspot regions where magnetic fields are strong and twisted. And the possible impact, so why we need to study CMEs? Because they have several impacts, mostly negative, but some positive as well on the Earth. It damages satellite electronics and GPS communication. It also leads to power grid failure. It leads to communication disruption, example, radio signal disruption. It also is hazardous to astronauts. So these are some of the negative aspects, but they also have some positive aspect because it leads to aurora formation. You may have heard about aurora borealis and aurora australis, right? Tell me what is the difference between the two. So this is the reason why these phenomena happens, but it also has major problems like this. So what did the Chase 2 observed? So Chase 2 was one of the payloads of the orbiter. So in general, what we do is in the orbiter, we place certain things that are there to measure some of the phenomena. So Chase 2 is Chandra's atmospheric composition explorer 2, right? So as the name suggests, Chandra is moon. So Chase 2 essentially, so not chance, but Chase 2 is a neutral gas mass spectrometer, and the purpose was to study the composition of lunar neutral exosphere in the mass range of 1 to 300 AMU, that is atomic mass unit. So basically, in simple terms, you can say that the Chase 2 was there to measure the composition of moon's atmosphere. That is it. Now, what they find it? So when the coronal mass ejection, that is CME, struck the moon, it intensified the ejection of atoms from the lunar surface. So it had an impact on the lunar surface. The second one, that it led to a noticeable rise in number of neutral atoms per unit volume in the dayside lunar exosphere. And lunar exosphere, if you know, it is an extremely thin atmosphere around the moon, so tenuous that the gas particles rarely collide. Now, why this is important? Because in the future, if we have some sort of a station in the moon, then we should also be aware about the potential impact of coronal mass ejection, because it is a significant phenomena, and it can create some sort of disruption with respect to radio signaling. It can also have severe other impact that we have witnessed on the Earth's surface as well. So by studying these phenomena, we'll be able to analyze the impact that CME has on the moon's atmosphere. Okay. Now, with respect to Chandrayaan 2, it was launched by which satellite? It was launched by geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle that was named GSLV Mk3M1. And in which year it was launched? It was launched in 2019. It comprised an orbiter, lander, and rover to explore what? The unexplored south pole of the moon. It was India's first attempt at a soft landing of the moon via the lander and rover. Objective: to expand the lunar scientific knowledge through detailed study of the topography or the region, seismography, mineral identification, and distribution composition of the tenuous lunar atmosphere. Okay? So these were the objectives of Chandrayaan 2. If you look at the previous year question, it was a very technical question that was asked from the moon mission, and the question reads as, what is the main task of India's third moon mission which could not be achieved in its earlier mission? So in the earlier mission, we were not able to launch, or we were not able to land on the moon surface because we could not get the contacts with the lander very well. But in the third attempt, or in the second attempt with Chandrayaan 3, we were able to do that or accomplish that feat, right? So that was one thing that we wanted to do. And apart from that, we also wanted to study about the atmosphere. We wanted to study the composition of the surface and also about the seismography, etc. So this could be considered as the mission. The second part of the question is list the countries which have achieved this task. So here the obvious answer is US, USSR or Russia as it is called now, and the third one is China, Chang'e mission. But what is in fact even more interesting is there are two countries that also started and failed to accomplish this task. So these countries are Israel and Japan, who could not get this task accomplished, but India was able to do. Then introduce the subsystem in the spacecraft launched and explain the role of virtual launch control center. So basically, we have discussed that the spacecraft or the subsystem were orbiter, lander, and rover, just like in the Chandrayaan 2 as well. But apart from that, the thing that made it very different this time was virtual launch control center. So what exactly it did was it was monitoring the entire system, and it was looking into the data at real time and manipulating the movement of the lander and rover. Okay, fine. So this is all about the third topic. Let's take a look at the fourth topic, that is new strategic EU-India agenda. And of course, this is from GS paper 2 IR. Why it is important? Because recently the European Council has approved the EU-India strategic agenda, and they have identified 5 pillars to address the emerging opportunities, challenges, and threats. Okay. Now, first of all, the question that we need to ask is, what are some of the reasons that have prompted EU, and especially the EU Council, to accept this agenda? Now, EU Council is the highest, or in fact, if you look at the European Union, it is essentially a political and economic union of 27 countries. And it has a huge history of how it got into formation. In fact, majority it is considered to be formed under the Maastricht Treaty, right? And the problem with the EU is that they have several differences among themselves with respect to the priorities that member states have. And often this has led to their engagement with other countries, right? So with India also, they have several differences in approach, whether it is about data, whether it is about export of several other trading or market access, or with respect to immigration. So there are several challenges. But there have been certain reasons or certain background events that have prompted EU and India to come closer. One of which could definitely be identified as the rise of unpredictability in the US administration under Donald Trump. That is definitely one of the reasons. Second is rise of China. And third could be considered as backlash against the multilateralism, right? So these could be considered as the reasons why EU and India are now converging at several levels. And if you look at, or if you read the editorials and the opinion pieces of several IR scholars like C. Raja Mohan, so they have talked, or he has explained EU and India as middle powers, right? So what are some of the 5 priority pillars? So if you look at in very simple terms, these 5 priority pillars are, first is with respect to growth, second is with respect to defense, third is with respect to innovation, fourth with respect to global collaboration or connectivity, and last is with respect to enablers. So these are the 5 pillars where they're supposed to coordinate in the real time or in terms of the recent things, and given the chance that there are emerging opportunities and then there are also challenges that are emerging. So growth is something that both of these countries want. India is an emerging economy, and EU essentially is a country where if you look at the demography, it is on the higher side, right? So it requires growth at both stages, and this pillar is to ensure growth along with job creation and with respect to creation of market access and with increasing FDI and investor protection. But the growth itself is not an objective. Growth has to come through sustainability. So they have also mentioned growth and sustainability as one of the pillars. Then the second context is with respect to defense. So you now know that especially France is one of the major defense partner of India. And with the unpredictability that is now being witnessed in the advent of, through the advent of Donald Trump, we can say that EU is also looking to enhance its defense partnership with several countries. And because of that, this is an important pillar in India-EU relations. Next one is with respect to innovation. So the third pillar is with respect to innovation that is going to, especially in the frontier technologies like AI, and with respect to connectivity, this is essential to mitigate the issues with respect to global supply chain. For this initiative like IMEC, India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor was launched, but it is still not materialized because of several geopolitical tension. So again, this is one of the things that India and EU wants to coordinate on. Apart from this, they also want to coordinate with, they want to have a coordinated global response to certain problems, or a uniform response to global problems like climate change or the crisis in the Europe region, or whether it is in the West Asian region. Then there are certain enablers as well. So if you look at the enabler across the pillar, it promotes skill mobility, knowledge sharing, business ties, and institutional cooperation. So promoting of skill mobility will increase the prosperity and sustainability. Apart from that, it will also has a good, or it will also improve the technology and innovation. Then knowledge sharing will also definitely lead to technology and innovation expansion, and business ties will lead to better prosperity and sustainability, especially through finalizing the FTA and the IPA, right? Investor protection agreements. So these are the 5 pillars. If you look at the India-EU relations, historically, India was among the first countries to establish diplomatic relations with the then European Economic Community, that was in 1962. In 2004, their relationship was upgraded to strategic partnership. Then in the terms of bilateral trade, trade in goods between India and EU reached 120 billion euros in 2024. And this is very significant because EU is India's largest trading partner as far as goods are concerned. Then with respect to foreign direct investment, cumulative inflows from EU valued at US $107.27 billion between April 2000 and December 2023. So what we can say that it is a tremendous, or is a very significant partner as far as trade and investment is concerned, right? In fact, there are several convergence of values as well as interest when it comes to India and EU. Therefore, they are poised to have better relation in the future. At the same time, there are several issues that continue to threaten their partnership. In the next news, we have Japan elects first female prime minister. So Japan has elected Sanae Takaichi as country's first female prime minister. So if you look at on the face of it, it appears that it is a very good news from the perspective of gender equality and from the perspective that it is very inclusive in nature. But if you look at, or if you go beyond the surface, it shows or reveals a completely different picture. In fact, Mrs. Takaichi is considered to be a very conservative in approach. She does not support same-sex marriage or homosexuality, right? She also does not support couples having different surnames, right? So she is very much conservative in approach, and in a way she is very much similar to the approach followed by Shinzo Abe, especially in the external affairs, right? So whether she would be good for India or not, we will not be able to understand in a very few span of time, but maybe after some time we will be able to judge whether she has better, or she will be able to be better for India or not. But anyway, all the countries, they take decisions for their own national interest, and then the other countries have to change as per the whole scenario of that country. So anyway, in this topic, what we'll be looking into is not the evolution or the analysis of India-Japan relation, but we will be using this for comparing and contrasting the political system that is present in India and that is there in Japan. So this is one of the frequent areas of investigation as far as UPSC mains is concerned. So, and they have asked this already when it comes to UK, US, France, etc. So let's take a look at the political system and see what are the commonalities or similarities between them. So first thing is, both of them have written constitution. So what is a written constitution? A written constitution is one which is a compact document, and it is like a book, and all the elements are presented in one single document, right? And more or less, it is not subjected to many interpretation. It is essentially part of some constitutional process, right? So India's constitution, but on the other side, India's constitution is the lengthiest in the world, while Japan has a small constitution with at most 5,000 words. Now tell me why India has one of the largest constitution in the world. Second, parliamentary democracy. Both are parliamentary democracies with a prime minister and the real executive head. So how is parliamentary democracy different from a presidential democracy? In the parliamentary democracy, you have two heads of state, two heads basically. You have a real head and you have a nominal head. The nominal head generally is the one who is considered to be the symbolic power, and the real head is the one which is considered to be the one which has the actual power, okay? So both of them are parliamentary democracies with a prime minister as the real executive head. Then they both have bicameral legislature, which means that they have two houses. So Japan's parliament is called that National Diet, consists of houses of representative and houses of councillor. So this is the lower house of Japan, and this is the upper house. And then while India's parliament comprises the Lok Sabha as the lower house and the Rajya Sabha as the upper house, okay? Then fundamental rights in Japan, it is provided under chapter 3, that is from articles 10 to 40. It guarantees what? Equality, liberty, and human dignity, while in India, part 3, that is from article 12 to 35, provides for 6 types of fundamental rights. And if you look at the other similarities, we have independent judiciary. Both India and Japan have independent judiciary. There is universal adult franchise, which means that everyone is given the right to vote. There is constitutional supremacy. So UK has parliamentary supremacy, but here both in India and in Japan, because of the fact that they have written constitution and because of a tradition, that constitution is given supremacy. So these are some of the similarities between the two. If you look at the differences, in terms of head of state, Japan, still there is monarchy that is followed. The emperor is considered to be the symbolic head, while in India is a republic where the president is an elected head. Even though the election is indirect in nature, but it is still an election based. There is no dynasty or there is no monarchy that is present in India. Second, in terms of the structure of government, Japan follows a unitary system which includes or which has centralized power at the national government. But India does not have this process. India has a federal system where power is divided between center and states, and it is mentioned there in the constitution itself. And it is especially, we have Schedule 7 that talks about the distribution of power, and then there is independent judiciary that will decide on, with respect to the problems or the differences in interpretation of power of center and state. Then with respect to the nature of constitution, Japan can be considered to be rigid because it is extremely difficult to amend. In fact, Japan's constitution has never been amended since it was promulgated in 1946. Then when it comes to India, it is partly rigid and partly flexible, which means that it is a combination of both rigid and flexibility. but it can be amended by Parliament under Article 368, and more than 106 times the Constitution has been amended, or at least by 106 times it has been amended. At the same time, there are substantial limitation on the power of Parliament, which is imposed under the Basic Structure Doctrine. Then, with respect to the political parties and system, Japan follows dominant party system, which is led mainly by the Liberal Democratic Party, just like India had Congress till 1967 as the dominant party. So Japan continues to have the Liberal Democratic Party as the dominant party system. But in India, we follow multi-party system. We have several parties, and we also have a coalition form of government. Generally in Japan, they have they arrive at the majority by one party only, but in India, earlier there was coalition, and still it is decided by coalition only. Even now, the NDA government is a coalition of several parties, right? So this is all about the differences between India and Japanese political system. Let's now talk about the place in news, where we are covering Italy with its capital Rome. So why this was in news? Because Italy's birth rates are set to sink to a new record low in 2025. And this is something that you will see being mirrored across several developed countries, because there is a huge shift towards this curbing population, and they have initially this was because of the fact that it is very expensive to raise child. So majorly because of economic and cultural reasons, this demographic thing is now being witnessed in various developed countries. And recently, Italy is joining that part or list. So if you look at the political features of Italy, it is located in the South Central Europe on the Apennine Peninsula. It is positioned both in the northern and eastern hemisphere of the earth. If you look at the land border, so it has both land borders and maritime borders. So Switzerland, Austria lies towards its north, then Slovenia in the northeast. Slovenia is in the northeast, and France in the northwest. Okay, so this is all about the countries which neighbor Italy through land. Then when it comes to water borders, it has three major rivers or seas. In the southern side, of course, you have Mediterranean Sea, but in the Adriatic Sea is towards the east, and you have Tyrrhenian Sea towards the west, right? So when it comes to the geographical features, the highest point is Mount Blanc. Major mountains range Alps and Apennines. Major rivers are Po and Adige. Volcanic activity, Italy is considered to be largely volcanic in origin, and it also has active volcanoes that include Mount Etna, that is there in Sicily, and Stromboli, that is in Aeolian Islands. Now let's move towards the quick updates. The first news here is about specialty fertilizer. So recently, China has suspended the supply of specialty fertilizer. And this is not just limited to India, but it has done this for all of the countries because it requires it for its own usage, and this is what it has provided as reason. So let's understand the concept of specialty fertilizer. So specialty fertilizer, as the name suggests, they are specific to the specific needs of different crops and soil types. These formulations are designed to supply nutrient efficiently, often in a controlled, targeted, or slow release manner. They improve the nutrient use efficiency, reduce losses, and minimize environmental impact. So they have several benefits, as you can see here. In fact, if you look at India, the fertilizer rate or the percentage or the composition of the fertilizer is heavily dominated by the N or the urea-based fertilizer. And because of that, there are several productivity losses are witnessed. So it is essential that India uses the specialty fertilizers very efficiently, right? So India consumes approximately 1.2 to 1.5 MT per year of specialty fertilizer. But the problem is the majority of the demand is met through imports, with China accounting for more, right? So this is all about the specialty fertilizer. Second is about real effective exchange rate. Why it was in news? Because the rupee has weakened to a record low with the REER, that is real effective exchange rate, indicating a continued undervaluation. So you may have heard that rupee has depreciated with respect to dollar, right, considerably. But this trend is also reflected in with respect to REER as well. So what exactly is REER? REER measures a country's currency value against a basket of major trading partners' currency. So here, not only we are considering it's for the for US or any other country, but for India, it is as high as 40 current countries that we consider the amount for, okay? And it is also adjusted for relative inflation so that the price hike will not provide for some miscalculated things, right? So it is adjusted for relative inflation as well. So how it is derived? It is derived by adjusting. By adjusting, it means removing the nominal effective exchange rate for relative consumer prices. So from our NEER, the inflation part is subtracted and then you get REER, okay? So it also provides for or indicator for how competitive the trade is. So a higher REER makes exports more expensive and imports cheaper, reducing the trade competitiveness. But on the other hand, if the REER is lower, then it indicates that the currency is undervalued, and if the currency is undervalued, the import cost will be less and will be less, therefore it will boost exports, right? Because countries will export more from the country which has lower REER, right? Next news is with respect to trachoma. And why it was in news? Because Fiji has officially become the 26th country worldwide to eliminate trachoma as a public health concern. So what is important here is which country has declared this. So recently Fiji has declared that. And what exactly is trachoma? So trachoma is part of what is called as NTD, that is neglected tropical disease, and the world's leading infectious causes of blindness. So it is related to eyes. Second, it is mostly seen in the tropical countries. So basically, the neglected tropical disease are those diseases which are seen in the tropical areas for which there is very little investment and funding done for the vaccines and for the medicines. Why? Because in general, these countries have poor paying capacities, so the companies are not encouraged to invest substantially in these problems or in these diseases. So therefore, they are called as neglected tropical diseases. Now, what is the cause of trachoma disease? It is caused by a bacteria called Chlamydia trachomatis bacteria. And how it is spread? It is spread via personal contact, contaminated surfaces, and flies exposed to eye or nasal discharge. So it is highly infectious in nature, and repeated infections cause eyelid scarring, inward turning eyelids, and ultimately it leads to blindness. It is endemic in vulnerable communities with limited clean water and sanitation access. India has successfully eliminated trachoma as a public health problem, okay? Next, with respect to star formation. And this is important because a study by the Indian Institute of Astrophysics has shown that supermassive black holes and their relativistic jets suppresses star formation in nearby galaxies. So it was already a hypothesis that black holes would definitely will not have a positive impact on the star formation, but recently IAPA has observed it through a study that supports this hypothesis. Now, with respect to star formation, we need to understand the different stages of formation of star. So stars form in cold, dense molecular clouds as gravity condenses gas and dust in protostars, igniting nuclear fusion, right? So here the dominant force that is there is not nuclear fission, but nuclear fusion. And the lifespan of a star depends on mass. The low mass star, they become white dwarfs, and the high mass stars explode as supernova, leaving neutron stars or black holes. Okay, so make sure that you have understanding of all these terms like white dwarf, supernova, neutron star, and black hole. Next topic is about Central Asian Mammals Initiative, that is CAMI. And why it was in news? Because Central Asian countries have come together under CAMI for what? To protect 17 shared species like saiga, Bukhara deer, etc. So first thing that is important here is which countries are called as Central Asian countries. So there are 5 countries which are called as Central Asian countries. Let me know which countries are called as Central Asian countries along with their capital. The second thing which is important from this news is what exactly is the CAMI initiative. It is taken to, or it has been undertaken to protect what? 17 shared species which are common among these 5 Central Asian countries, and these are saiga, Bukhara deer, etc. Now, what exactly is this initiative? It was launched when in 2014 at the 11th meeting of the Conference of Parties, that is called COP11, to the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animal, that is called as CMS. What is the objective? Objective is to coordinate conservation efforts of the 17 key migratory mammal species in Central Asia. So that is what is required from the exam perspective. Next topic is about Kurinji flowers. So first, where it was observed in Tamil Nadu. And Tamil Nadu's recently notified reserve forest in which hill? Gudalur Hills is covered in violet Kurinji flowers, and it has blossomed blooming after 8 years. So what exactly are Kurinji flowers? So Kurinji flowers or plants, they flower only once in lifetime. So that is one of the defining characters of Kurinji plants. And the more famous Neel Kurinji blooms once every 12 years at relatively higher altitudes. Prominent location, Shola Forest, Western Ghats. So these flowering indicates healthy grasslands. Disturbance causes patchy bloom. So if there is disturbance, if there is problems with respect to the whole ecosystem, then the blooming is not done effectively, it is patchy at best. Also, it acts as a barometer of biodiversity and climate change. So earlier, the blooming would take place after once in 12 years or something like that, but now it is being witnessed only after 8 years. So it indicates some sort of climate change, maybe a positive change, maybe a negative change, but it is a change, or it indicates some sort of climate change, right? Next topic is about Saranda Forest. So why it was in news? Because the Supreme Court bench recently ordered the Jharkhand government to give an undertaking to notify a new wildlife sanctuary in Saranda. So what exactly is Saranda Forest? It is the largest sal forest. Sal forest essentially is a moist deciduous tree in Asia located in Jharkhand. Saranda basically means the land of 700 hills. What are the faunas or animals present? It is home to endangered species of flying lizards and elephants. With respect to flora, it has sal, that is the moist deciduous tree, kusum, mushroom, and mahua. And nearly 80% of the human population belongs to certain tribes called Ho, Munda, Orao, and some primitive tribes. Okay, so because UPSC frequently asks questions like this in terms of not just the flora and fauna, but also the tribes that inhabit these regions. Next, the last topic is with respect to gallantry awards. So recently the central government issued a gazette notification listing the gallantry award citation for defense personnel, especially those who were involved in Operation Sindoor. Right? So we don't need to know the names exactly, but what we need to know is about the gallantry awards, which are given for acts of bravery, valor, or self-sacrifice, both during wartime and peacetime. So it is not just limited to wartime, it is also given for peacetime as well. So the first three gallantry awards, namely the Param Veer Chakra, Mahavir Chakra, and Veer Chakra, were instituted by the government of India on 26th January 1950, but they were deemed to have come after 15th August 1947. Ashok Chakra class first, Ashok Chakra class second, and Ashok Chakra class third were institutionalized in 1950, and they were renamed as Ashok Chakra. The second class was named as Kirti Chakra, and the class third was changed as Shaurya Chakra, and that was done in January 1957. These awards are announced twice in a year, that is on Republic Day and the Independence Day. So these are some of the factual or some of the aspects that you should be aware of when it comes to the gallantry awards, because earlier UPSC asked a similar question with respect to Bharat Ratna awards, right? So this is all about the news today for 19th, 20th, 21st, and 22nd October, right? So this is all about, make sure that you also attempt the questions and provide your answer in the comment section. Thank you so much and all the best.